Hi, I'm Cheryl Belson with American Sewing Guild, and I am so happy to be joined for this episode of Fireside Chats by Shankari Paradee. She's the owner and founder of Sewl Sister, and that's spelled S-E-W-L. Shankari recently came to our attention when she participated in an online event called the Sewing Summit. She designs and creates hand-sewn clothing and products from throwaway, landfill, or dead stock fabrics with a mission to live in a world with zero fabric waste. Her best loved sewing projects are quilts and memory bears, designing them with maximum beauty and minimum waste. She was born and raised in Canada, but now she lives in Oklahoma with her incredibly supportive husband and 3 beautiful children. Shankari, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you all.
I'm really looking forward to hearing your story and learning more about you. So let's just dive right in.
Perfect.
I always love to start these fireside chats hearing more about how people got started and made their journey from that starting point to where they are today. And I understand that you started sewing at a pretty young age by being involved with your parents' sewing business. In fact, I remember you telling me of some of your first learned sewing skills being seam ripping. So I think that's very interesting. Can you tell us about that story and the sewing journey that has unfolded since then?
Yes, absolutely. So basically, I grew up with sewing in my life with my family because my dad had his own upholstery business at that time. And we would work on taking apart like sofas, love seats, cushions off of dining room chairs, things like that. And you had to have just a little bit of like hand power, the little bit of muscle to kind of take it to the next level with seam ripping those kind of items. And I just remember doing that with a double-sided blade at that time. You know, it's kind of dangerous for a young kid to use, but my parents knew how to teach us that skill. And so
how old were you? You said at such a young age. How old was that?
Yeah, I think I remember, like the earliest I can remember was probably about 6 or 7.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could have had dangerous, episodes, but my parents were really good at teaching us like those things are sharp. So just be careful. We had the rule in the house, like don't use those scissors because those are fabric scissors. It is a real rule in seamstress houses, right? In households where there's tailors and seamstresses, that is a big rule. So we had those in place. I even remember one time when my parents had left us on our own, I had taken one of those blades and I had gone to the cord on the end of a sewing machine and I had cut pieces of the cord off. So I did get in trouble for that. But, I didn't know what I was doing at that time. And I was just trying to like see what would happen, almost like a MacGyver type thing. I don't know if you watched MacGyver. I'm dating myself just a little bit there. But those are little memories that I still remember. And even my parents will refer back to those times, like, do you remember when? And as my sister and I got older, my sister is 5 years younger to me. So she really looked up to me in terms of, playing time and, spending time with me. And so we would make Barbie clothes or doll clothes together. And those are some of my younger memories. And I don't have pictures of those memories, but they'll always be there in my mind. So it's a great experience. Yeah.
And so from these razor blade experiences that you shared with us to today, tell us a little bit about how you've made your journey to where you are now.
So I feel like I have definitely grown from that stage quite a bit. I have my own seam rippers now, which is great. But what I love about my journey is that each step of the way, I learned something new. And my first experience of really focusing in on honing my skill was after I moved from Canada to Oklahoma in 2006. My parents gifted me a 1960s Viking, which I still have to this day. It's my pride and joy possession. I love that machine because it just reminds me of, where I came from. And, it was the first machine I made my very first quilt on. And my sister has that quilt still. And it's been a journey. I remember doing stitch in the ditch sewing on that one to get it quilted. And then since then, obviously, I've done long arm quilting, and I do free motion and also computerized long arming. And so I've like evolved over time to this quilter, and now working into pattern design. So we've gone like multiple layers there.
Wow. Wow. Well, I'm really intrigued with your strong commitment to zero waste in your sewing projects. I'm curious what generated your passion for learning to design your work around that commitment, and wondering if you can talk a little bit about any design challenges that come into play when you are trying to design with zero waste in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a challenge, I would say, because in the culture that we live in now, it's so easy to just go out and buy fabric at different stores. And there's nothing wrong with buying the fabric. I love buying fabric myself. And I really enjoy looking at all the beautiful different colors and things like that. But there comes a time where you're like, okay, you must go into your stash and use a little bit of that stash, right? So I try to create quilt patterns with that in mind, where you can use even the scraps onto the back side of your quilt and create something different on the back, maybe a signature piece that's specific to you. And also, when you're creating your quilts and you do have that waste, save it for other projects if it's big enough, or if it's too small, like if it's just, the ends of your seams and little threads and things like that, you can use them to put inside stuffing a pillow. Or if you're making a small little pin cushion, you could use it to stuff the bottom just to give it some weight. Little things like that can possibly be done. And also you can use those little scraps for, local charity locations where they have animal shelters, for example. They love getting those pillows that they can use for their animals. So you can put all the scraps into those as well. There's a lot of different organizations that are out there. So don't be afraid to Google and just look for places where you can donate scraps.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. So was there a specific event or occurrence that really kind of awakened this spark towards zero waste in you? Or was it just something that just kind of emerged on its own?
Yeah, I think it did spark at a specific time in my life when I was trying to decide which arena to kind of go in, where if I should choose to stay in nursing. I was an ER nurse, emergency room nurse, and I was still on this path of this journey of learning how to figure out sewing and quilting and what that all looked like. And I felt like, sometimes you feel like you're stuck in between, and you're torn between two different loves and passions. And really, you get to choose, right? You can choose to stay in both and see what that looks like. And I made the decision to step away from nursing at that time and go and delve more into my sewing and look at my passion there. And when I started looking at more and more what it would take to be in that industry, I realized there is a lot of waste that's happening. And the following year, I actually went to New York Fashion Week, and I just got that experience and exposure with different artists that were out there that was very similar to me, and they wanted to create that sustainability effort. And so locking arms with people around you that have the same mission as you, that really helped for me to grow. And I think that propelled me to keep looking for answers and ways to reduce waste.
Interesting. I was watching a video actually just this morning about recycling and reuse and the fashion industry itself. And I was surprised by some of the statistics. And I probably won't get this exactly right, but it was something like there's 4 times as much fabric waste in the design and creation side of fashion as there is in actually discarding the garment that you bought. So I thought, how surprising how much waste there is even before the garment gets into your closet and before you decide you don't want it anymore. So it's a big topic. It's an important topic, it seems.
It is. I believe that you can look up the statistics around this as well. It's like there's so much water and so many different chemicals used to create one particular garment of fabric. So it's not just like our consumption of it, but it's even before, like you said, it's like the creation of it, takes a lot of time and effort and energy. And then on top of that, all the chemicals and water. And then after that, what happens when we put it into landfill or when it gets, to places like across the world, for example, in India or China or somewhere where the pile of clothing is just insanely huge. And those fabrics, the dyes that are in those fabrics get leached into the water system, and how that would affect those countries in that way. So there's a lot of things to kind of look at and think about, and also think about like who's making your clothes, right? We can get into different arenas. I'm very passionate about advocating for human rights. And so I don't want to use products that necessarily are being created through human trafficking, for example, or work trafficking. We can get into so many different arenas looking at just fabric consumption. So yeah, huge
topic.
Yeah.
Well, shifting gears just a little bit, I mentioned in the intro that your best loved projects are quilts and memory bears. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about these memory bears. How did you get started making those? And then how does that even fit into your passion for zero waste?
Yeah. So I started working on the bears. A friend of mine had reached out and she wanted to have bears made of some of her, a friend of hers clothing. And it was a mom that had passed away, and she obviously had left family behind. And so in order to support that family, my friend reached out to me and said, "Hey, I have the clothes. Would you be able to create something out of the clothes?" And I was like, that's so perfect. I can totally do something. And so ended up buying a very easy pattern from Simplicity. And I think the Simplicity pattern is still out there. It's 8044 if anybody wants to know. They have a pattern that has like a bunny rabbit in it. And I think there's a dog pattern in it and a bear pattern. So I chose the bear. And I made her several bears for that family. And that's basically how it started. It's just being able to have the bear, since that person is not there. It's like being able to give that hug, that to that person. And I just felt like I was supporting that family in their grieving and just helping them to get through those moments when you really miss that person. And that was a really great connection piece for me. And I think it just ignited that fire to just keep going and being able to use people's clothing to create the bears.
Oh, that's so nice. Now, I think you brought a bear or two with you this morning that you can show us. Is that right?
Yes. So these are actually very small mini bears. The Simplicity pattern is double the size of these, but you can see I used flannel pajamas to create this one.
Oh, nice. How cute.
Yeah. And so what I do is I just line it with a really light, lighter medium weight iron-on fusible so that the fabric doesn't stretch and it holds its shape. And then this one, I actually created it from scraps of fabric. Mr. Domestic is a fabric designer out there. And so these are his fabrics called Snow Day from AGF, Art Gallery Fabrics. So if anybody wants to, purchase those fabrics, I'm sure that's available in your area. But that's a project that I did for one of his Snow Day launches, which was really exciting. And I used little hexagons. I don't know if you can see them, but I tried to eyes and stuff. Yeah. So I actually took little hexies, about 1-inch hexies, and turned them into the bear, patched them all together. Yeah.
Oh, so cute. It turned out adorable.
Thank you.
Well, and one of your other best loved projects is quilts. And I understand that just this year you released a new quilt pattern, and I know that that had to be exciting, but a lot of work. So I'm wondering if you'd tell us a little bit about how your pattern idea came about. And of course, I want to hear how you designed your zero waste focus into creating the new design.
Yeah, absolutely. So the quilt pattern the quilt that's right behind me is actually my quilt pattern, and it's called Tumbled Triangles. And so what I did is I made a really easy beginner friendly quilt pattern that was geared towards low waste or zero waste. And I try to make my blocks as big as I can for the fabric that I have. So we're going to go like 9-inch blocks or 8.5-inch blocks that we're not creating so much waste. It does look like a lot of waste because you are squaring up your blocks, but that's, I think, part and parcel of the journey of creating quilts. You are going to create a little bit. But the way that you can minimize that is just make sure that you only buy the fabric that you need for that particular project. And then whatever is left over, just use that to create, like I said, the backing, or save it for another project. Maybe you could make a bear. You just never know. There's endless possibilities of what you can do with that. So always keep that in mind. And then for my testers, it was really great. This was a different experience. I have other patterns that are out there from previous years. One of them is a really simple flying geese pattern that's available for free if you go onto my website. And then the other pattern that I have is a whimsical Windmills pattern. And it just was something that reminded me of my childhood days when I used to blow little windmills. You remember buying those windmills?
Oh,
At the local stores. And so that pattern is based off of that. So that pattern is also available. And I try to use the rest of the fabric for other projects. And I just keep that in mind. And so this pattern was particularly different because I actually took the time to have it be tested ahead of time and allow the testers to really support me in editing and making the pattern such that it was really easy for people to use, like making sure there was enough diagrams. And if there was something that they didn't understand in my wording, that I could change that. So that really was very supportive and helpful on their part. And then they got to experience creating my pattern. And a lot of them were brand new to sewing quilts. So I was really happy that they had an opportunity to test it out and learn something new for them. So that was great.
Oh yeah, it's sounds like this would be a great pattern for a beginner quilter to select then.
Yes.
And kind of learn the ropes a little bit through making this quilt.
Yeah. And there are a few little skills that are kind of a little bit trickier, like, cutting on the bias and little things like that. But I think it's managed really well within the pattern to teach you those techniques in a really simple way.
Nice. So how many testers did you work with on this project? Do you remember?
I had about 20 to 21. Yeah, I had quite a few. Yeah, 20 testers that I think at the end ended up finishing, which was great. It was beautiful. So if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you'll see like their tester quilts. All of their designs are up there. I've been kind of doing a little parade as I launched the pattern and showing off their designs because they're what really makes, the pattern work. So
nice. Very, very nice. Well, also, I'm curious about just trying to do all of this. Was this pattern coming out it just came out recently, right? Like during the pandemic?
Yes. So we're recording this on the 18th of February, and I released my pattern on February 8th. So about 10 days ago, basically, right?
Yeah. So did that, I guess maybe this is the perfect kind of project to work on during a pandemic because you can
feel like it is. Yeah. And I mean, if you don't have the yardage, a lot of people will, I'm an avid collector of fat quarters, which is like an 18 by 22 piece of fabric, just because you just love the fabrics and you fall in love with them. You could use that fabric and create one of the blocks and make it a really scrappy type of quilt. There's multiple arenas that you could go into there.
Oh, yeah. Well, it also created more need to work from home. And in the introduction, we talked about your incredibly supportive husband and your 3 wonderful children. How is that working with everybody? It sounds like everybody's kind of in the house a lot more together. How did that work?
Yes, everybody is at home. So my children have been, they've been still at school on some days. They have blended model schooling, which is a really interesting model for schooling. It is part-time homeschool, part-time at school. So that's been really great. But of course, now we're in this like snow season. So right now they are at home for the most part, but the school has been really great in terms of pivoting them and allowing them to be at home and having almost like a Zoom chat, like what you and I are doing right now. So that's been good. There are times when it can get kind of hectic with 5 people in one household. And, you just want to have those moments where you can kind of step away. So, my husband's been really great. He's kind of taken over the computer office room. And so I do my Zoom chats from wherever I can in the house and just make it work. And we separate duties for grocery shopping, things like that. And we try to make it work around the kids' schedules. And if we're going shopping, try to make it like only one of us goes shopping to kind of minimize the, overall impact. That gives us time to be alone too, even if it is grocery shopping. You get to manage it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so family life and work life just, it has to flow together always, but even more so, it sounds like for you right now.
Yeah, it's so funny because I've always wanted to have my husband at home because I just feel like a family unit is only as complete as you want it to be. And for me, that complete feeling was having to have my husband at home. And so we always joke about it like, oh, we created the pandemic so that we can all be together. Sorry, everyone. We just because it's the best of everything, right? Having your whole family unit together and then being able to also find the space and the time to enjoy your time when you do have to yourself. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, I always love to close these chats with hearing about what's coming up next. So is there anything we can be watching for out on the horizon for Shankari, Sewl Sister?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been working on, this is just a work in progress, but I'd like to be able to produce a beginner sewing class probably on a YouTube channel or like a way out there where I can video it and then share it with the world. And another thing that's on the horizon are a couple of patterns that I'm going to be releasing. One of them, my daughter actually helped me design, so I'm super excited. Yes.
The mother-daughter pattern. That's awesome.
I know. I think it's so sweet. And I love her colors that she's picked out. And it has the capability of being used for scrappy fabrics, which is great. So we're excited to release that hopefully at the beginning of March. And then I'm doing a modern quilt project with a bunch of ladies that will come out sometime in the summer. I can't say too much about that one yet. It's kind of still in the works. But yeah, I think that will be really exciting too. So
how much fun. That sounds like a lot of fun. So, well, this has been very, very interesting. It's truly was not intentional that I watched the video this morning that I referenced earlier, but it seems like today is the day that I'm supposed to hear more about zero waste. And so I've really enjoyed being able to hear about that through your eyes as well. It's just been a pleasure. Thank you very much for spending time with me today, Shankari.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
And we look forward to seeing some of these things that you've got coming out in the future, these patterns and these videos. So best of luck to you. And until next time, bye now.
Bye.